All right, welcome to the Phantom Sushi or Phantom Trope Sushi Forum, where we're discussing all things sushi with a focus on the strategic raise this week. Just to open it up, we're gonna start off by talking about Trident because that is a massive release that just came out today. Um, Omakase, do you want to sort of talk about this and just open it up, and then we'll take questions from any of the sushi community?
Yeah, definitely. Happy to answer any questions. If anybody, don't be shy to raise your hand. Generally, Trident is our response to all the AMM innovation going on. One of the key factors of Trident is actually placing this AMM, and not just one AMM, but essentially four different types of AMMs into bento box to make it highly capital efficient. If you kind of consider how sushi started, right? We used sushi and yield farms and incentivizations to, make liquidity positions more capital efficient, push them into impermanent gain, right? And so bento box and putting the AMM on bento box is kind of the next iteration of increasing capital efficiency, right? One can only imagine that once we migrate the roughly 3.5 billion liquidity that we have onto Bento Box, and Bento Box is deploying some very low risk, passive yield strategies. Right, we can start to see something like 2 to 3 to 4%, yield on all balances on Bento Box from all AMMs deployed, and also on Keshi, and that really just makes everything much more capital efficient by based on some calculations an order of magnitude of 2. Um, so there are four different new pool types, right? There's our regular constant product, we have hybrid, we also have concentrated liquidity, and then we have like weighted pools. And these all satisfy kind of the current innovation regarding curves in this space. But we also shouldn't discount the fact that we also have order books now already deployed live for our limit orders on Polygon. So these all working in tandem can give users kind of always the best price, can allow LPs to be highly capital efficient, and kind of satisfy the role of an AMM. Additionally, right, we also have, this Trident is also it has the ability to have continuous integration. So as new innovations come out regarding any new curve types for specific types of assets, those can be incorporated into Trident, into BentoBox without another version update. So just continuous integration. Internally we've called Trident Next Gen AMM or AMM Infinity. It's because it is technically the last AMM that we have to deploy because it is continuously integratable. So that's generally the larger vision of this new AMM that we're deploying. And I'm happy to take any questions regarding the specifics from
We've
the audience.
got ACAC with his or their name hand up.
Hey, CAC. Oh.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. Might be a mic issue. I'll leave them up for a few minutes because they're just silent, so just in case it's a mic issue. But we also had a Dang Duke with their hand up. Okay.
Dang Duke, if you've got a question, please raise your hand. We can get you up here. And if anybody else, of course, please raise your hand. And we do have the AMA text questions for those who just want to type questions in. We can any questions we have regarding Trident right now.
I do have a question about the gas efficiency of Trident, and it's sort of optimizing for the routes that it's taking for swaps.
Definitely. I'm happy to touch on that.
Yeah, I've
Um,
seen some concerns about it, so yeah.
so I guess with regards to, so we're coming out with a completely new routing system. Traditionally routing is token A to token B, B to C. Now, since technically we have 4 different AMMs, right, on Bento Box, we can do something similar to partial fills, where you can, and this is more reminiscent of like aggregators. And essentially, we have become an aggregator because we're deploying 4 different AMMs. So this leads to much more sophisticated routing, where the routing can do like partial fills and have it's more of a graph structure as opposed to a linear structure. So there are some efficiencies there. In terms of gas efficiencies, how we kind of view this is um, for LPs and for other people within the Sushi ecosystem, what we'll continuously see is um, more network effects around using Bento Box. And Bento Box, as we as we've kind of scoped out in the beginning, was meant to be highly capital efficient and also like have gas savings. So once you're in Bento Box, right, all your balances are automatically accruing yield. So there should be no reason for people to hold balances in MetaMask, etc. And when you're within the Bento Box ecosystem, the gas reductions are on a magnitude of around 15 to 17%. So that's somewhat significant. Of course, there is the like the gas you have to pay to enter into Bento Box and withdraw, but those accounted for, those should be roughly on par with the current gas optimizations you see from all other AMMs. So it's, in my eyes, it's mainly a UX UI issue, less so of a gas issue. And additionally, we're going to be deploying Trident first on mainnet, but also on all of our side chains, also on all of our L2 solutions, in step by step, right? So Arbitrum, we've already deployed our the V2 AMM on Arbitrum and Optimism testnet, and so Trident will soon follow after the there's more deployments and infrastructure built around it. So I don't know if that addresses the issues of gas efficiencies directly, but I think Bento Box was always meant to be kind of like a layer 1.5, right, where there's inherent gas efficiencies for being inside Bento Box, and Bento Box can also exist on layer 2s, right, and then that'll be just a hyper optimized experience. And then we can get into the concept of gas relayers, which will also have tangible benefits as we start to see like kind of the movement between different chains and etc. And also for our AMMv2, we're also coming out with gasless swaps, and this is a feature that will soon be released, and this will also be something that's incorporated into Trident as well. Happy to take
Gotcha.
any questions.
Yeah, one KNO Bend. I don't know if it's pronounced no bend, but they ask, do you foresee any issues with composability with this multi-strategy route? Could see it adding another layer of complexity with projects trying to interact with the protocol.
So in terms of composability, there should be there shouldn't be a huge barrier to entry, in our opinion. There are ways that we can optimize the concentrated liquidity pool to make it more composable. And as we see from Kashi, there's also interesting things you can do, right? With so, for example, on Kashi we have this concept of KM tokens, ERC20s that you receive when you when you issue a lending position, right? And similar mechanisms can also be deployed for, very seamless composability without, having to withdraw from BentoBox, etc. So on that front, not super concerned. We're working with all of our integration partners to bring them up to speed on, the queries, function calls surrounding BentoBox, because that layer does need to be adjusted somewhat, including our own infrastructure. But this is just a natural progression, and, the integration into BentoBox is, somewhat straightforward. So we'll be interacting with all of our integration partners to make sure that, on Zapper, your Bento LP positions, are displayed, right, with other partners, and, we'll be releasing documentation on how to do that. I wouldn't say any of these things are breaking composability per se. It's more of a documentation issue.
Gotcha. And so when should we expect Trident to go live?
Great. So contracts are done. They're currently going through audits and formal verification. What we need to do now is we already also have largely most of the interface designed. So now it's just execution regarding the interface implementation, this new routing mechanism that also has to be done on the interface level, not on the contract level, and also subgraphs and all the surrounding infrastructure. Because the subgraph queries do change a bit because everything's now in BentoBox. So those all need to be redone. And a lot of our function calls, previously also need to be redone. So I think the timeline currently is around a month to a month and a half. And then as we approach that date, we'll announce a launch date. We'll also announce the plans for migration. And we'll also announce a week before, we'll also release the contracts a week before launch. So tentatively, I would say around a month to a month and a half as we get all of the surrounding architecture set up.
All right, awesome. And just to let everybody know, we'll be talking about Trident, I'm sure, in more detail next week and in the weeks to come. Once it goes live, I'm sure we'll have a lot more to talk about. But yeah, now we're gonna move on to the main topic of this week, which is the strategic raise. And we actually have very thankful to have special guests from Spartan Capital with us. Or Spartan Capital or Spartan Group?
Capital is our fund arm, so we're all part of the investment team. We actually have our CIO here, Kelvin, who is also in the listener. So if you could pull him up, that would be awesome as well.
We got to raise his hand here. Calvin, boom, there we go. Come on up. Nice.
Awesome. Yep. So this is the entire Spartan Capital team here.
Nice.
Awesome. So the way I sort of wanted to format it is I sort of wanted to get your team's perspective on the raise so far, just a general overview of, like your initial impressions and your thoughts going forward as it's evolved, and then also sort of if you guys have had a chance to read Omakase's recent proposed deal, sort of response to that, and then we could sort of continue from there with any viewer questions or just open discussion.
Yeah, happy to offer some context. So I offered some of our comments on the forum recently, but just for those who haven't had a chance to go over it, so for some context, we were pretty early users of Sushi, right? We were following the launch of Sushi Swap. We're pretty early users and liquidity providers as well, and we've been pretty vocal supporters of the project. And I think Maki can attest to the conversations we had early on, where we were, referring different projects to launch on Sushi, writing some of the governance proposals around insurance mining as well, and also kind of proposing ourselves as multi-sig signers during the early days for Sushi. So we've been involved with the project quite early on, and we're super excited. And so when Maki approached us earlier last month, middle of June, for a strategic raise, for the purposes of diversifying the treasury, it kind of aligned with our internal view that, hey, markets are going to get dicey, so it probably makes sense. So we wanted to get involved. And at that point, a lot of the terms, actually all of the terms, were already set by the existing leads. So we didn't really negotiate anything. We kind of just accepted the terms as they were presented to us, and we thought they were, quite fair. But obviously, we hear exactly what the community is saying about some of the terms, and we're really open to kind of discussing what makes more sense. So we've reached out to, in the past few days, we reached out to the guys at Arca. We had a few conversations with them. I reached out to the founder from UMA, Hart, to kind of learn more about this success token structure, and basically trying to discuss internally multiple times, like what are the what kind of structure would meet the community standards of fairness in terms of bringing on board strategic partners that can bring a certain scale in terms of liquidity provision and strategic introductions of uh, DeFi projects in our venture pipeline. So yeah, we're really here to discuss what the community wants, and uh, and not really here to kind of force any agenda, but happy for others to chime in on this as well.
Yeah, I'll quickly add a couple of points as well. So I think it's great to see the all the debate that's going on. Clearly, the community cares a lot about the project and the race specifically, and I think the original intent of the race, just based on the conversations with Mark, he was actually not to raise 60 million, but a smaller amount, right? And I think just based on all the comments that have been made so far, I think this revised proposal of raising 20 million definitely makes more sense. It would be good, I think, to also get some additional input as to how the capital is going to be spent, and on what specifically and over what kind of time frame, just to contextualize that number. We did sort of indicate we were interested to to help out and to contribute to this round, and we remain interested. And as Jason had mentioned earlier, we did not propose the terms, right? The terms were what was put in front of us, and we were excited about it. We did not negotiate the terms at all, right? We just accepted it and indicated the extent of our commitment. And so likewise, with this restructured raise, we're happy to sort of to understand what makes sense, and come up with something that works for everybody. Happy to also reduce the size of our contribution if that makes more strategic sense. And then, obviously we have an investment committee that we need to take the revised terms to, and and then we can go from there. So we believe that we're one of the funds out there that can add value to Sushi, and we've been involved for a long time, and we want to continue to be involved.
Awesome. Yeah. I mean, one of the main sort of desires from this entire deal is to sort of bolster Sushi's whole deal flow and like get tokens onto Miso, and just have Sushi be that ground layer where DeFi is launched from. Do you want to sort of speak on like the possibilities that obviously no, this is not like any guarantees or anything like that, but sort of broadly speaking, sort of how you guys could present value on that front?
Yeah, I think one of the more important ways that I guess differentiate our value add from, say, myself as a retail investor outside of the fund is our pipeline, right? So we recently raised a $110 million fund just for DeFi projects. So the entire fund just focuses on DeFi. So given any week, we might be talking to 5 to 10 different new projects. And from that pipeline, we do our own filtering. So we basically select, okay, which ones of these projects are not scams? Which ones of these projects are, actually teams that are building interesting things. And from that pipeline, we can refer to Sushi for kind of new product, for new token launches, new token listings. I think that's one of the biggest value add immediately. Um, and obviously other things that we've been doing, liquidity provision on SushiSwap itself. But I really think that that's kind of like a baseline thing that really anyone can do. But in terms of something that kind of differentiates us more is this kind of intense focus on DeFi and this continual pipeline of projects that we see.
Yeah, and I'll add to that sort of in terms of more specific numbers, right? So I think over the last 3 years, we've been very active, right, in terms of investing into DeFi projects. We've probably made about 70 to 80 investments. And obviously, have a much bigger network than that. And through the fund that we just launched recently, which we're in the process of deploying capital out of, we will probably be making another 100 or so investments over the coming 2 to 3 years, right? So that's a massive pipeline. And the other sort of related thing to mention is that, as most people are probably aware, we were, quite instrumental as well in helping Bybit Exchange launch BitDAO, and we're one of the bigger investors in BitDAO as well. And obviously, BitDAO sort of has its own partnership with Miso, right? And so through BitDAO itself as well, there's another sort of pipeline of capital as well as projects that we will be working with, which could also form part of this pipeline. And then I would say that there's a lot of excitement obviously within the community about the Miso platform, right? A lot of the DeFi projects that we talk to, want to be part of this, and so I think. I think it'll be successful, and obviously we'll be talking to a lot of other projects about the merits of being on Miso as well.
I guess I have one question following up on your timeline of investing in 100 projects. So if you have 100 projects in your portfolio company, for example, and it's coming one, soon, how do you think you will help in a customizable way for each project?
Yeah, so, well, first of all, we have currently about 40 projects in our portfolio. And as I mentioned, we will be adding probably about 100 more over the 2 to 3 years. So we obviously get in and work with these projects very early. So typically at the seed stage, or if not at the seed stage, then typically when they're doing their strategic round. And we do a number of things for our portfolio companies. So everything from helping things with token design, to go to market, to referring partnerships potentially. In certain cases, helping them think about how they launch the token, and then subsequent to that, obviously, oftentimes we're also users of product. We can also provide liquidity on the platforms. So we provide all of these, and then of course, not to mention sort of marketing as well, right, on social media through our various channels, Twitter, podcast, and so on and so forth. So we do a lot, and that's the reason why many DeFi projects like to talk to us. In terms of how we support them, first of all, obviously we're growing a team. Our investment team at the moment is 6 people, and we're continuing to add to the team. And secondly, obviously these projects don't all require the same amount of attention at the same time, right? Typically, I'd say where we get really busy with them is prior to them going live, right? Where we will do a lot of work, and then once they go live, there's an ongoing conversation, but it'd be less intense, work for us. And then finally, I'd say that obviously we all work very, very hard, 24/7. So that's how we're able to support them. And we'll continue to invest in the team, to make sure that we were able to scale with the.
Yeah, and just to add some color here, we're not gonna bullshit you and tell you that hey, we're talking to every single team every single day, right? If we do invest in 100 projects, after all, we're still a small team. Like Kelvin said, we're expanding pretty aggressively, but it also depends on whether we're a lead on the project. So if we're large investor in the project, obviously we spend a lot more time, like disproportionately more time on projects that we invest largely in. If we're a follow-on investor, so say we're putting in a small check following another lead investor, then we kind of provide strategic help as they need it. So introductions to other projects, especially to folks out here in Asia, you know, um, those things don't take up too much time. But obviously, for projects that we've been very selective with projects that we actually lead. So those are, without going to specific numbers, those are check sizes that could be, 10, 50x of a smaller check size. So that kind of reflects the amount of conviction and the amount of effort that the amount of resources we dedicate to supporting that project. So far, correct me if I'm wrong, team, but I think we've only led maybe 3 projects inclusive of Sushi. So that kind of gives you a sense of how selective we are when it comes to our larger bets. So obviously, this proposal around the Phantom Trope race is going to be one of our largest investments to date. So that kind of reflects what kind of resources we put in as well. And even before this, we've kind of already been referring some projects to the Sushi pipeline, and there's already been some synergies between some of our smaller investments and some of our large and Sushi itself. So one example is DinoSwap, right? So we're one of the smaller investors on DinoSwap, and recently they also launched on Sushi. So I think even from that, from having a large pipeline of projects that we can refer to Sushi is um, is a potential strategic value add that we can bring.
And just to kind of follow up with that, and you're discussing like the size and whatnot with Sushi, but as far as like conflict of interest with such a wide portfolio range as well, just some questions around that.
Yeah, so because we're a DeFi fund, a lot of projects do tend to converge in terms of um, in terms of what they look like in the long term. So I think one of the possible ways that DeFi could play out is a lot of things end up looking like banks, looking like decentralized neobanks. So there could be some overlaps between use cases for different projects. But during our investment committee, we go out of a way to make sure we are not investing in direct competitors. And if there are similar products, we make sure the positioning and the go-to-market are very different. So for instance, we have invested in some different yield projects, yield token projects, but we make sure the construction of the yield tokens and also the target audience are completely different. We have passed we have passed on quite a few interesting teams because we've invested in projects that we think are way too similar in terms of the product, in terms of the positioning, in terms of what they do. So yeah, so this is something that we're very aware of, and especially when it comes to kind of larger bets, right? Especially for projects that we lead, we're not going to lead. We're not going to be a big investor in competing projects. Um, and for smaller bets, sure, there might be some overlaps just because, there's I think DeFi is too early. There's only a certain number of projects out there. But then over time, I don't think that would be as big of a problem.
Okay, yeah, thank you. Hopefully that answers for everyone there with the conflict of interest.
Do you guys have any geographic focus of your for your projects, portfolio projects?
Yeah, so we invest pretty globally. I think our portfolio is probably a third Asia, and then the 2/3 is either Europe or US or other parts of the world. Um, I guess that's one of the things that we focused on is the fact that we speak multiple languages, right? So just for the people on this team alone, on this call alone, we have people based in Singapore, India, and Hong Kong, and we speak the languages as well. So we've been able to kind of tap into strategic introductions, be it maybe centralized exchange introductions or other strategic investors or partners or projects across different continents. Um, and actually, this is only the investment team for Spartan. Spartan also has another business, which is the advisory team, which is actually bigger than our investment team. And there's quite a bit of synergies there, where they advise projects on a more kind of formal basis, but we are able to tap into some of the resources on that business as well. Um, and those guys are even more global in terms of their coverage.
Um,
I was gonna try to get up some of these people who have their hands raised.
And also, while we've got a bit of an opening here, I apologize to the remaining 200 or 300 people that did not get popes. It looks like about 300 were issued out, but we have broken the bot again. We are down to 0 pope bots right now, so yeah, we're going to be looking at some sort of a manual retrieving and moving forward. So we'll discuss that later, but basically if you didn't get a pope yet, there won't be one coming, and we'll try and come up with a solution afterwards. Sorry again, it's a long process here. These things have been a real nuisance. Anyway, hopefully that covers for everyone.
And yeah, just to add a comment here, I did notice that no bend or K no bend, not sure how to pronounce it, mentioned that VCs in this round are adding this token to their liquid portfolio. So Sushi's not going to get any support that as the C stage project would get, because it's all in a liquid portfolio. I'm not sure where this is coming from. But if you look at the comment we put out, the fund that we raised for DeFi projects is a 5-year fund. So this is not a trading fund. So we're actually not allowed to trade in that fund. So this is a 5-year venture horizon buy and hold fund. So that's why I guess we'll move on to that, but we're actually quite open to the adjustments on the lockup terms, and obviously that's pending, as Calvin said, what the rest of our investment committee thinks, but yeah, that is not accurate.
And you, if you had a question, feel free to ask it.
Yeah. Hey, thanks for allowing me to ask some questions. I got a two-part question, which is the first part is really just from reading through the copious amount of comments on the forum, it appears that the need from the community's expression is that Sushi has a need for treasury diversification. Not necessarily, there's no need for money, but there's definitely a need for treasury diversification, especially given the fact that we are sort of in a borderline bearish market. And that's one need. And the second need is that we need to potentially, get some value in terms of whatever that strategic value is, whatever that definition is. Now, it doesn't appear to be the case, at least to me, that they have to be joined together. They can be decoupled, and they can be done separately. So have we discussed that at all as a potential path? Because, given the amount of contention on the forum, and there's so many fragmented opinions, and everyone's talking in totally different directions, has that been something is that a consideration that we should be discussing?
Yeah, so I think with regards to, I've spoken on the forum. I've also spoken on the previous AMA regarding this topic, whereas I use this word firm as opposed to venture capital, because I do believe that there are many other players that we can derive strategic value from, right? And also in the last AMA, some people asked, why don't we just have proposals to pay, certain consulting firms, right,
Yes.
directly? So I think that's something we currently, do on a limited basis, right, from the ops fund in order to streamline certain operations on our side and optimize, right? So we are engaging with consultants. I guess the rationale for this proposal is something you just pointed out, which is being able to hit basically 2 birds with 1 stone, right? Diversify the treasury. In the last AMA, I called it being able to have a sword and a shield, right? Because in market downturns, you need to hedge. If we believe Sushi is undervalued, we can use the USDC to buy even more Sushi back. And on the other level, it's about establishing strategic partners. And on the forum, I go into detail on what I think strategic means for Sushi in its current position. We're at an inflection point, right, where we've past 2 to 3 months, 2 to 3 quarters, we've built and generated numerous financial primitives and financial features on a decentralized infrastructure. And now it's time for us to kind of consolidate all of those to kind of be able to exercise this mission of welcome home to DeFi. Start your home here. So what does that mean for tokens going forward? And I think Spartan touched a little bit upon deal flow. So part of strategic value added to us is we're not just an AMM anymore. We're an ecosystem, and we're an ecosystem where people can launch all the way to grow and maintain and incentivize, etc. We want to be the best place for like projects to launch because that helps us capture volume. So as part of the strategic value added that we're kind of looking for is we want partners that can have deal flow, right? And strong deal flow to basically use our ecosystem, leverage our ecosystem. And then on the second level is once you kind of have this ecosystem, you can begin to establish standards. And that's a mix of like regulatory, legal, product, advisory. So we're also really looking for partners who have a lot of experience in that, right? So as I pointed out in the forum post, like this might actually preference some like traditional, older, venture capital firms who have really had the experience of going through the process of seeing new technologies and establishing the standards for them, right? Because DeFi is still like 1 to 2 years old. There's no standards anywhere, right? And standards really help us with defining like our response to regulatory concerns. Because if we have sufficient standards in place, right, we're by default defining what the regulatory standards are as well, right? So that's basically where Sushi is. The meaning of, I guess, strategic value in this sense, consolidated from both internal thoughts and also like community thoughts. So to answer your question directly, I think this raise is about knocking out 2 birds with 1 stone. Should we engage other firms, right, to extract strategic value on a more like contractual basis? Definitely, yes. And we do that kind of like operationally, right, already. But that doesn't satisfy, the treasury diversification part, right? And at the end of the day, right, we do need some USDCs to spend, right? Because maybe not all these consulting firms or entities accept Sushi, right? So
No, and that's a valid point. But killing 2 birds with 1 stone makes sense if there's synergy involved in this. And this really gets down to the question of how much is going to cost the community, or specifically how much is going to cost in terms of giving away to whatever group that's coming on board. But and that's that's another discussion. But getting back to this particular issue of, I mean, Sushi is a DAO, and obviously to expand DAO in terms of, and this is something that I'm not very clear about in terms of how do you bring about not necessarily consultants, but the developers that are working on this. Is everybody working on Sushi? Are they consultants or are they employees, or what is the structure of this effort, this DAO, in terms
Definitely. So I think on a simplistic sense, right, we have contributors, right? We leverage, like, as I was saying in an earlier session, 100% of our talent is from the community, right? And from the community, we derive like a core team that handles like day-to-day operations and also, product and like product research, product development, and deeper, AMM research as we've seen with like next gen AMM and other items like this. So, but at the end of the day, right, the community is incredibly important to us, and I think growing that community will also be incredibly important for us to kind of. And earlier, I was just speaking about, right, we're a DeFi blue chip. If you take a step back, that doesn't mean anything, right? In the larger scheme of capital markets, we want to be like a capital market blue chip. The only way we can get there is if we expand the DAO, right? So for some of our strategic partners, right, like we're looking to incorporate like kind of, also traditional firms that are tiptoeing around, crypto, that have a lot of experience in defining standards and et cetera, and getting them involved in, the DAO governance process, right? Because this is a very new kind of like process for discussion and refining proposals and, really taking like so-so ideas and making them great ideas, right? And really appreciate, Spartan coming out today, and making that jump, right? That's something that I think the community expects, right? And also, something that we've been trying to promote is, more levels of community engagement, right? And, VCs, other entities, consulting firms, et cetera, are all part of that, community. So we want people to be engaged, It's very scary, right? To like come up here and speak and you know, um, ask questions, etc. But it's like a hurdle we all have to jump over together if we want to, grow the DAO. Because at the end of the day, we want we want people to go past their comfort zone and expand the DAO to even traditional players, right? Because they'll have good ideas. Governance can help refine those ideas, and as we said on the last AMA, right? Every idea is probably a bad idea until it goes through kind of a group process to kind of refine it into like the best thing it can be. And I think that's kind of what we're seeing with this process here, right? With this current like strategic proposal, right? Where we've done the revisions and I guess to address like the cost to the community, right? I think in the previous AMA, we also touched upon this topic, which was in the new proposal, right? Like we've heard the community, we've gotten a lot of feedback from a lot of players. We think that a discount is value destroying. So, in the new proposal, there is no discount. And additionally, we do feel that equality of access to whatever terms are set and, for this raise is also like a primary objective. So we've set out to try to figure out, whatever that's offered to like institutional players is equally offered to the community in a community round as well. And I'm happy to open up discussions on how like on the mechanism on ensuring fairness and equality of access, because there are some edge cases, right, that need to be considered. But generally that's how we've approached this process. And the newest proposal, and I don't know if you've seen it, but in the forum, I guess, summarizes all these facts and is kind of our way moving forward. So welcome any questions. And as I said, equality of access was a topic on the previous MMA, and like the details of that, I'm actually very, very keen to get a lot of community feedback on, because I'm sure there's tons of thoughts into, okay, if there is a community round, how do we make that as fair as possible? Right.
And just one other part here to follow up, and you with with any kind of questions from the, or like negative feedback that was gathered from the community in the beginning. Again, as Omakasi's mentioned here, using that as the temperature check to get us to a proposal that is more aligned, and then delivering that, and then having a vote on that proposal. And at that point too, if that gets rejected, then it's go back to the drawing board, or maybe this whole idea, it doesn't make sense for the community. But I think we're slowly gaining the needs and the demands from the community and what's best for the community as well. And as we can see here, we've gone from originally from a 30% discount to a no discount, and hearing what even VCs are looking for as well and what works with the community. So again, just pushing it that way as well, that we are going to continue to get the feedback from the community rather than just ignoring the negative sentiment. And hopefully
No, I mean, I think that's fair. My only objection or reservation is that, diversification of treasury is probably a big deal, and to get that done as quickly as possible, because we really don't know where the market is going. And so there's motivation to get that done sooner than later. Obviously, I'm not the best person in terms of, calling timing in a market. But then, with regards to the getting strategic value add, it doesn't have to be tied to the, getting USDC or getting diversifying the treasury. What I've been hearing and reading from some of these comments, and when the VCs talk about what's their value add, there's been a lot discussed about how they're making introductions or bringing, some of their portfolio companies to Sushi. But if you have a BD team inside of Sushi, you can do that yourself. Sushi is not a brand new startup. It's a blue chip. And so therefore, granted, having additional people around the table can always help you more. But I think at what cost is really what you have to ask yourself. And all these things have a cost, even if there is even for example, there's no discount, there is an implicit cost in there somewhere. So, to rush to a decision while at the same time you need to get some kind of diversification going on, that's my biggest reservation, I would say. And that's pretty much my only comment.
I think to address that, like, definitely hear what you're saying, that diversification is should be like top of mind. I think kind of some of the thinking behind this is, as you said, right, most things have kind of some implicit cost, and once that cost is spent, right, we could do, for example, we could utilize our new limit order system on Polygon to just set a bunch of limit orders, and whoever wants to fill them at certain price points can go in and fill them, and that would reach some level of treasury diversification. But once we do that, right, there's no ability to attract kind of like the strategic partners, right, in the more either traditional VC sense or the fund sense. So once that sushi gets spent, right, like we can't, like there's no like additional sushi to be used to attract like these types of entities.
Yeah, but
And-
I mean, no offense to to Spartan, who I don't really know that much about, but when I look at the list of the VCs that are on this list, the 21 VCs, I don't see a lot of. I mean, there's obviously some good ones, but most of these guys are fairly smallish or youngish firms that haven't gone through different cycles of the crypto market.
I definitely think this list will slim down a lot. Right, this was just
but also
initial
above and beyond that, it's like my first expectation of looking through this list, there's some OGs from the venture community that are not on there. And these are the guys that have gone through several cycles of crypto market. And they've rolled up the sleeves, and they've actually gotten down dirty. I mean, what has been described in terms of value add that I've read from the from the forum, as well as from some of the comments from some of the VCs. Yeah, I mean, it's introductions. They deploy capital and they add liquidity to it, but there are other ways of doing that. And all it comes down to at the end of the day is, what is the cost, right? And what are we giving up as a community to get that? And so that is a very subjective question, because we don't know what that cost is right now.
Could you be more specific about like what you see as implicit costs?
Well, there's certainly reputation damages. I mean, at the end of the day, so. The way I look at it, Sushi is a fairly big and blue chip type of name. Our VCs, I think, do get some benefit through association. I mean, at the end of the day, venture is a business of trying to get, you make some good investments, and success begets success. If you can associate yourself to some winning hits, you can go out there and get additional deals. That's how the venture business works in essence. And so, we are out there and trying to basically find ourselves or bond ourselves to whatever VCs that are out there. But I wonder if there's a situation of adverse selection in this case. Because when I think about, everyone has their top 5 names of venture VC firms out there in terms of crypto space. But none of the guys that I was thinking about are on the 21 names.
Clarify there, is your issue against the specific funds that are on this list? And if so, what are the funds that you want?
I mean, I don't particularly, well, I don't want to necessarily want to go out there and say that, because I'm not sure if those guys are interested in doing this. Because obviously investing in the DAO is a little bit different. It's a selection by the committee, and that's always really hard when you have a committee of thousands of sushi holders. So I can see that's how some of the investors out there, venture firms, would not want to be part of this, because it is a fiasco in some sense. But on the flip side, as a sushi community member, I'm motivated to try to figure out how I can, how we can safeguard our position and try to make the best decision and select the best outcome for us as a community without having any repercussions. And so in that sense, I think there is a need for treasury diversification, and let's get that done and let's get it over with. And in the meantime, if there are other things we need to do, such as, whether it's figuring out what's going on, how to partner up with others, there are people you can hire that do that kind of stuff. Right now, it may be the case that if some of these funds that are willing to step up to the plate, and they may have the capacity to have some of their staff help us in those roles, that could be a bonus. But I'm not sure if that's something that we're really discussing. So at the end of the day, I'm just trying to figure out what is the value in return for what we're providing for the investors. Definitely. Versus if we just go out there, just do it and just let our community. I mean, because I'm sure that. Look, everyone is somewhat motivated. I mean, I'm spending time on this call right now because I'm motivated, because I'm a sushi holder, right? And so there is some level of incentive going on. It's just a matter of trying to figure out, how to extract the optimal incentive. And
definitely. And I think Jeff from Arca has also emphasized this fact of extracting maximum value, right? Because now is not the time to be, selling at a discount, etc. I partially from what you're saying, right, is that there is value added from some, traditional VC players, etc. I would say this like initial list for the very initial proposal was like a short list, right, of just like interested parties who were like, had, probably a soft outreach to, right. This list can be readjusted, right, and we do encourage the community to, suggest, like, who do you think, which entities or which venture capital firms are value added, and there are a few that we're also in discussions with, but they haven't had resolution, so we haven't been able to put them on that list, right? And as you said, right, I don't think it's a fiasco per se. I think certain entities just cannot perform certain operations with DAOs because it's never been done before. So as I said, right, everything is kind of like new in this space. We need to set standards. So what's super important, right? Like what's super important to like value added, on my personal opinion, which I put forth in the proposal. The community might have like slightly different definitions, but it's like people who are willing to, people who have experience and are willing to, set those standards with us. I do think there are some names on there that have a lot of experience doing that, and there could be more names, right? I don't think that's the exclusive list by any means. And definitely hear what you're saying about like diversification, and as you said, right, it's a timing issue, and we don't know if it's like this week, next week, or if it might never occur, but like on a basic level, there's like kind of two issues. Diversification, right? Diversification is also related to like run rate. And then from both of those things, like if we can also knock out like strategic partners that the community, feels, should be added to the list, and like, let's do it. I think that list is not restrictive and also is not final, right? And we've put forth very specific definitions on what we feel is strategic to the growth of sushi, right? And I think we're aligned on probably most of those definitions, and like certain unnamed entities, right, that we feel should be like included in kind of this round as well. So happy to discuss more on like which firms, which venture capital funds, you and the community feel would be like strategic value added, according to kind of the definitions that have already been composed from all this discussion. And then at the same time, right, there is an operational concern for, diversification. And I think previous proposals have handled that somewhat, but now it's kind of like, okay, we can, do diversification and also include like strategic partners in this. And as I said before, once this diversification is done, right, it's done, right, it's spent, right. We could do limit orders and then the sushi is sold, right, and that doesn't come back. So if we can, if the community and we can revise the proposal, and I think the proposal has come like a long way. The discussion has come a long ways. We're gonna have an AMM every day this week, as long as it takes to make sure everybody's like on the same page, has full visibility and also full communication. So if we can actually shape this proposal into something that everybody feels is a value added, and I think the current newest proposal does really capture, does really extract maximum value for all interested parties, including like operational and community, and also like these other participating entities. Then we can start to move forward, right? And I think this whole process has kind of shown like how strong community is, right? Like even throughout this process, new protocols, right, are being like created from this process, right? We have like UMA range tokens, UMA success tokens. We also have like the small proposal, etc. So I think that's just incredible, right? And that just shows like, through this discussion and through like, through like having kind of this direction, we can actually produce lots of value, even if we're just talking, right? Just, and I think the process is what's important. And, I welcome, any thoughts, regarding like any revisions that should be made. As I said, that list is not final. that was just that's like a proposed like short list of soft interested parties. And again, right, kind of like in our previous AMA, right, consistency is key, right? We also want to see all of our strategic partners or people who want to be our strategic partners, participate, right? If you're kind of like hiding somewhere, right, and like not participating in the community, then that shows kind of a lack of consistency. And it's very clear on the forum like who's been super consistent, etc. Right? And we do encourage more participation, more consistency, to kind of build up that like community reputation. So that's generally the direction I think we're headed. And I do definitely agree, like diversification is key. And we can and also happy to consider what other value added like entities you feel should be included to that list. If you see in the re-proposal, there's actually no list.
Hey, I want to
So
quickly
So
chime in here. Yeah, can I quickly chime in here? So, just to be fair to Marky, I actually think this list is a very good list to start with, right? I mean, if you know DeFi, if you've been sort of investing in DeFi, you would know that this list has some of the strongest DeFi investors, right? You've got Verify here, you've got Dragonfly, you've got Polychain, you've got us, you've got Pantera, Multicoin. That's like a who's who, for a lot of projects, even blue chip projects, right? The only name here that the only sort of major crypto / DeFi fund that isn't on this list is Paradigm, right? And we know why they're not on this list. So I'm not sure, what which fund the earlier speaker was alluding to that should be on this list, but I actually think this list is a pretty good one.
Awesome. Hopefully that helps you understand, I guess, where everyone's coming from, new or NU. And yeah, please feel free to keep reaching out here in the forums and in the general chat and whatnot as well. And yeah, if like you said, you had some ideas about other strategic partners that could actually help as compared to perhaps VCs or firms, that discussion can happen as well. So yeah, then.
So happy to follow up on Wakase's point of being consistent. I also wanted to clarify, some of the standards we have been setting when we engage with investors so far when it comes to shortlisting. So, for example, Lightspeed and Arca are, among the VCs that we have been talking to consistently over the past week. And one thing that we realized that we have come in common with is supporting decentralization, right? Our community wants a fair proposal. They want fair terms. They want fair deal. And Arca and Lightspeed are very happy to come forth and come into an agreement of how we structure this deal that's both fair for the community and the institutional investors be on board. So I guess the standard is also standard here we're also setting is how we think about onboarding traditional firms to DeFi, right? How we educate them in terms of participating in DAOs and and sort of engaging them with them in a very decentralized, harmonious level. So going forward, I would say for funds that are actively supporting the community, Sushi's community, and the ideal of decentralization in general is what we're looking for. Ultimately, seeing them participating in the forum consistently is what makes us and our community the happiest.
right, and ultimately, right, these AMAs, and we're going to have them every single day this week, and encourage to anybody listening in this audience, if you want to participate, please participate. Reach out to Magic Turtle, reach out to Tangle, right? They'll get you scheduled, right? Participation, consistency in participation is key. Like that's generally, not only our expectation, but also the community's expectation. Be part of the community, engage, and regardless of the outcome, the DAO becomes stronger through each engagement and each discussion. So, really appreciate, any entities that are, taking the jump and like stepping up to participate on stage and really encourage other lurkers out there, right, to do the same, right? Because that's key to this process: visibility, transparency, and also accessibility. So
Awesome.
happy to take any like further questions.
Yeah, maybe let's just have, we've got 3 people that have been up here. I mean, King Shan, I want to say, and Human. If you've got a question here, just we'll maybe follow up with these 2 and then start wrapping this up here. But King Shan or Human?
I've actually got some questions that we can cover while we wait. They might be bots, to be honest.
Human? No, I remember, I think Human's been, I thought that was somebody that was actually a human. But King Shan or Human? If not, okay, go ahead, Turtle. But yeah, we can start looking at it.
Yeah, I was just going to. Well, I mean, I actually have a few things to ask. I guess the first thing I want to talk about is the deal as structured right now. It's 20 million, 10 million for the community, 10 million for investing funds with no discount, 2-year lockup, 2-year vesting with the call option. I'm curious, sort of Spartan's opinion on the call option, sort of. I mean, I know it's sort of tough to ask this candidly, but like what they think like a fair pricing on the call option would be on it. I think at the expiry it was like a 3 or 4 year expiry. Not entirely sure on that. But yeah, I was because that call option sort of is what we are is the value that we're giving away, I guess, to frame it in the way that NU was talking about the raise.
I guess before Spartan answers, because maybe the pricing is a more detailed, derivative calculation. I do think in terms of the value given away, that the call option, and this has been, discussed intermittently throughout the forum, like SPF also mentioned it on Twitter, Uma also mentioned it. There's been various comments calling this kind of a success token or success metric. I think the call option, in terms of the value we're giving away, if you think about it, it really aligns all parties because, if Sushi doesn't reach the strike price, the option expires worthless. And on the operational side, this allows us to essentially sell or underwrite the option at a much higher price than Sushi is right now. So in terms of value lost, it's essentially that option that is also, equally accessible to the community round, all the terms are the same, is essentially us being able to sell Sushi at a forward price, which I think is value creating as opposed to, the initial proposal, which was a discount, in which the community has, basically reached a consensus that the discount would be value destroying, right? So that's just wanted to offer 2 tidbits there, and happy to let Spartan share their thoughts.
I mean, I think the we're happy to work with either structure, right? That the community thinks makes sense, right? And so like I said, when the proposal was first put forward to us, we accepted it without any negotiation, right? Because we thought that was the intent of the community, but clearly that wasn't the case. And likewise, I think if the community thinks that this is a better structure, we're happy to consider it and obviously iterate with the core group and then bring this to our investment committee. Right? I think at this point, I don't think we have a particular view with respect to the specific pricing of the option, right? So I don't know what other discussions you've had with Lightspeed or Arca. We could either sort of speak to them and come up with something, or have the community decide what makes sense, right? And then I think in terms of the duration or expiry, obviously it needs to be I think 3 to 4 years of exploration is reasonable, right? Because it would obviously give so-called strategic investors the opportunity to work more closely to try to add value to sushi and bring the sushi price to a level that is win-win for everybody.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you for that. But the your fund would be open to that sort of structuring of the deal, and with like I mean, obviously these sort of details would take some time to work out and to clarify, but it would be some sort of like synthetic UMA call option or something like that. Is how it's looking.
Yeah, we'll be open to it, because, as mentioned by Jason earlier, we'll be investing out of our, venture capital fund, which is a 5-year fund. So, we're not sort of, we're not pressured to liquidate, sell anything here, right? So we're here for the long term.
Yeah, awesome. Okay, and then other questions I wanted to bring up were some stuff that Pegabit wrote in the AMA text questions. They were sort of a little bit more general questions about your fund. So it was basically asking if you could rank yourself on a number of points in terms of like what your fund you would say excels at or is maybe a primary focus. And the points are number 1, providing deal flows, number 2, legal and regulatory, number 3, helping create a bridge between CeFi and DeFi, number 4, branding and awareness, 5, governance and tokenomics, and 6, sort of I mean, I guess this sort of goes into the branding and awareness, but basically East versus West.
Yeah, I mean, obviously we it's inappropriate for us to sort of comment about ourselves relative to the other funds, right?
Yeah. Well,
but
you could just give yourself an A.
I mean, we would, obviously rank ourselves very highly, but probably won't be an objective assessment. But again, the reason why we were able to raise a fund of this size is because investors sort of recognize our capability in this area, specifically DeFi. And this fund is 100% dedicated to DeFi, right? And I mentioned all of the value add that we do, but I would say that I think the one specific area that seems to be most valued by many of the projects is the partnership angle. Just because partnerships are important to them, and also because we have such a broad, such a width of or breadth of relationships across the ecosystem we're able to provide. But at the same time, I don't want to sort of diminish the other areas, right? I would say that if you talk about sort of legal and regulatory aspects, Jason mentioned earlier that we have an advisory business that actively advises projects on this, in terms of how to structure themselves and how to be compliant and things like that. We have also invested in a project that focuses on sort of helping DeFi become more compliant, for instance. And in terms of bridging CeFi and DeFi, just for background, I mean, the 3 founders of Spartan spent 20 years each, right, in traditional finance, for the better or worse. But yeah, we have long careers in traditional finance, and I spent 18 years in Goldman and 3 years in a big New York-based hedge fund, and I was a former Goldman partner as well. So we definitely have all of that network, and I think the CFI DeFi bridge, I think is important, right? Even if we don't like sort of CFI or that fund, right? I think that bridge is important because that's going to onboard the next onboard significantly more capital over the long term for the growth of DeFi. And I can tell you that there is a lot of interest among the TradFi funds to deploy capital into DeFi. And I'm not just talking about the hedge funds specifically, but also family offices. I was speaking about a month ago with a very, very senior person in Goldman, who's part of the management committee. And I was telling him about what we were investing in. And he immediately knew and was familiar with all of these projects, right? And I was obviously quite impressed with the portfolio of companies that we've invested in. And so that just tells you that, actually even at the highest level of, TradFi, they are doing a lot of work to understand what's going on in the DeFi space and how they're going to be involved or hedged or whatever it is, right, going forward. So we obviously have all of that network, which will come in useful, obviously, in the future. Yeah, and then obviously, marketing prowess as well, through our podcast, through our Twitter following, something that a lot of projects do value.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, thank you for expanding on sort of, what you think that you guys really excel at, or some of the key points that, or some of been the strongest advantages for your fund. There's also a question about sort of KPIs. What is your opinion on KPIs and any sort of performance metrics on terms of partners and it gives me just, I don't know, gives me like anxiety thinking about performance metrics, because I do not want any sort of like the community's like voting on the performance of these funds. We've seen sort of how votes turn out when it's like
yeah, I mean, my only, we're not averse to KPIs, but my only comment there is that, obviously KPIs can be very subjective, right? Not just in terms of how you set them, but how you also evaluate them, right? And my only concern is that you complicate the deal, right? And you just basically turn off the investors that you want to attract.
mm-hmm.
That's all I'll say, right? Not because people are averse to KPIs, but because they are not sure, how the KPIs are going to work and so on and so forth. And
Yeah, that makes sense. Like even like a KPI that you guys might be comfortable with, maybe another fund, they don't feel very comfortable with it, and then it just creates all.
And just to kind of chime in here, right? If we do go with a call option structure, then by definition, the KPI is the price itself, right? If we fail to inject value into the ecosystem, if the price doesn't do well over the next, 4 or 5 years, I think it's probably consensus that if the sushi price is still where it is, that means the ecosystem hasn't grown at all, in 4 or 5 years. So I think the call option structure probably holds investors accountable to injecting value into the ecosystem. And obviously, there's other factors, that influence price as well, market cycles, blah blah blah, so on. But that's one of the things that's, I think, already baked into the structure is the price itself. But as Calvin mentioned, I think some of these other KPIs are quite subjective. So for instance, maybe Spartan has a massive DeFi pipeline. Maybe we can refer 5 projects to Miso every quarter. But maybe another fund focuses more on CFI integrations and they can't refer DeFi projects. So does that mean we have to design a custom-made kind of KPI template for each fund? Maybe that's what the community wants. But obviously that's going to head for the Sushi team as well to keep track of all these things and negotiate it with every single investor. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that's why the Sushi team decided to do, one strategic round rather than kind of 15 separate strategic rounds with, individual investors, right? Because of the efficiency. But if the community wants something that's more tailor-made for each fund and want to, spend a few more weeks to months on this thing, then that's that's we respect the community's wishes as well.
Awesome. Thank you for that. Yeah, maybe we've got favorite and 6 Ds. You've got a question, and then we should probably maybe look
it's
at
getting
wrapping this
close
up
to
here.
that time to wrap up.
Yeah, so I don't know if these two have questions or not. Favorite or D to the 6, if you've got questions. Otherwise, I think we've kind of covered most of the stuff in the AMA text questions, and Spartan has done an amazing job of covering questions asked by the community and so forth. So, I don't know if there's any kind of final thoughts or comments here from Spartan or Omakase or.
Yeah, just want to say, well, thank you so much for the Sushi team for kind of placing your trust in us and reaching out to us for this race, and involving us in this conversation. And also really thankful that you guys are doing an Asia session, because we do believe that, at least half the community in DeFi is based in Asia. So it's always great to be kind of involving people from this time zone as well. So really appreciate how flexible you guys have been and how open you guys have been to any comments. And I think, kind of taking a step back, shepherding any type of DeFi governance or any type of decentralized governance is really difficult, right? Because if you look at, equities, this is kind of like if every single person who holds a Tesla call option on Robinhood can voice their opinion in a forum. And obviously that's the beauty of DeFi. Everybody has a voice, but it also makes it very, very hard to manage. And I think you guys have done such an incredible job balancing opinions from all the different parties. I don't know how you guys do with respect to that. And thanks for having us on here.
Yeah, you bet. Thank you. I just see one last
Thank
thing
you
here
so
from
much.
from Alex. He's just wondering if we go through the deal structure one last time, since it seems like there's been a few questions on what currently is all the different proposals and what's been pitched in governance. I think we've kind of gone through, and it seems like everyone is with what Omakase has put up last in the forum. I haven't been in there for an hour or so, so it might be, I don't know if it's the last post up there, but just that structure that we had there, I think that's everyone is comfortable with, or Spartan is comfortable with that, correct? I hope that answers your question there, Alex, as well, if that's what you were referring to.
Yeah, do recommend everyone to. I know all of this is hard to follow, and we also have community members working on kind of consolidating all the different entities that have posted on the forum, different protocol level like proposals, etc. That should be up in a day or so. And also really encourage everyone to ask questions and to read the latest proposal.
Yeah.
I think to follow up on what Spartan said regarding KPIs, the purpose of the call option, correctly as they pointed out, was to add kind of simplicity to incentives, right? Because having very clear deal structure that everyone can understand, having community, core team, participating parties, everyone, I think is really key to transparency and visibility. If we come up with like incredibly complex structures, that starts to get lost in translation, and and that's why after a lot of consideration, we do think that the call option structure aligns incentives from all sides, right? Because effectively, we all have to work together to grow the ecosystem to the point that it is reflective on the price, or those options expire worthless, right? And everybody has just bought at spot. So this is kind of the ultimate performance metric, in our opinion. So as I said, we're going to have these AMA sessions every single day, and we encourage people to engage on the forum. I know the forum is hard to follow, but we're definitely looking for feedback.
Yeah.
Definitely looking for revision towards some sort of precision, and also definitely want people to continue to ask questions, I've put my Calendly on the forum as well. So if anybody ever wants to like schedule, a time to discuss or even, say, hey, what do you think about this, etc. Or like, I'm really pissed off about this, right? Then schedule time. My time is your time. And, throughout this process, accessibility, visibility, and transparency are going to be key. And I think the process has shown that, great things have come out of the community. There's been so many different protocol level proposals. There's been engaging discussions, and we're all working together to kind of revise, refine, and aim for something optimal. So really want everyone to engage, and really do encourage everyone coming out to these AMAs, participating, etc. And as we go forward, we'll be figuring out the schedules for like Asia time, US time, etc.
Yeah. So we're looking for tomorrow, looking at 1900 UTC to kind of cater towards Europe a bit as well. I think that's going to help
Definitely.
over there. And then just as you had mentioned here, Omakase, we do have the community members that have been working diligently here, trying to consolidate a bunch of these, as much of the forum proposals as we can that are have been significant or have kind of inspired innovation. So we're going to have that posted, have a heads up for that in probably the announcements channel. We'll post the link for that, and we'll make notes of it in the general chat. And, feel free to reach out somewhere within the chat if you can't seem to find it. But, in the Sushi Swap Discord announcements, in the main announcements, we'll likely post it there. That way, hopefully we can help consolidate everyone's ideas, because the forum is becoming a bit daunting for anyone who hasn't got in there, and hopefully we can help allow for some proper flow, I guess, or to expedite your catch up. And then again, like we'll link up to the post that Omakase has had last there, so that it's very clear as to kind of where we're at currently and what everyone is, I guess, at this point, as of now, where the deal structure looks like and what we're aiming towards. And sorry about all the POAPs. Or popes. We'll figure out a solution for you. So I apologize in advance, but I'll keep you posted on that as well. But my goal is to get a pope to everybody that's been here. So apologies, but we're down to 0 bots now. So sad times.
Scamming us.
Yeah,
I feel scammed.
Discord, if you're listening, we need help.
But yeah, so this is a good place to wrap up for the day. As we said, we'll be running another one or every day this week, and then also tomorrow it's going to be at what is it? I don't know the UTC time.
I think we said 1900 UTC. I think that turns out to be 10 a.m. 10 a.m. PST for the American time zones. PST will be, it should be 10 o'clock, I think. So, oh no, we said 1900, right? I think that's how it was 10 a.m. for PST and 1 o'clock for Eastern Standard Time. 1900 UTC though. So, and I think, of course, then that would be 7 o'clock 7 p.m. Over in Europe parts, and then towards 8 and 9 p.m., of course, depending on your adjustment from plus UTC or GMT or however you do it over there. But yeah, so hopefully a little more available for Europe. So hopefully this helped for the for the Asia community, and we'll see what happens moving forward.
Yeah, perfect. And just a final thank you to all the Spartan team members who came out to talk with us. I'm sure everybody in the sushi community really appreciates your time and you guys coming out to give us some insight.
Thanks for having us.
All right. Thanks, everyone.
Pleasure.
Thanks, Omakase. Thanks.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks, Turtle.
Thanks, everyone. See you guys tomorrow.
Thanks, Spartan.
Yep. See you tomorrow.